Friends, that time has arrived again for Beautylish's semi-annual gift card event, this time for spring 2025, and it kicks off right now, noon Eastern time, all the way through the 23rd, like 3 a.m.-ish in the morning and 11:59 p.m. for my Pacific peeps. This event allows the consumer an opportunity to earn a $20 Beautylish gift card with every $100 they spend. In addition, the event also holds exclusive bundles, offerings, more discounts, so it's quite fun to shop around the 3 days where you could build your basket, you could think on it, and I'm aware that all items will just sit around and wait for your decision, as a few of these might fly off the shelves. Nevertheless, we'll go through the favorites, and a huge thank you to Beautylish for sending me my wish list requests. In addition to these makeup items, I will also recommend makeup that I already own that you can also purchase from Beautylish. It was tough to pick because there are a ton of makeup items that I had on my radar, but I have to start with, of course, the Charlotte Tilbury Beautifying Eye Trend palette that has taken eyeshadow fans by storm, both good and bad. Where many were not happy about the Charlotte Tilbury packaging with the higher price tag, but before I requested Emerald Effect, I purchased Super Neutral a month ago and had swatched other palettes, and I bought in. I knew Emerald Effect was going to be absolutely devastatingly gorgeous just based on how impressed I was by Super Neutral, the smooth matte, but specifically the Razzle Dazzle Diamond Effect formula. I think Charlotte calls this in her palette. Yes, is it a clear plastic top? Yes. Does it look like a drugstore compact? I don't care. I care about the shadows inside. And to validate my feelings about the drugstore looking packaging, I weighed out a 9-pan palette in my local CVS, and it was lighter than the Charlotte Tilbury compact. So yes, even though it might look cheaper, it doesn't feel in terms of weight cheap, but the shadows, just look at these swatches, okay? All 9 of them. I knew I had to get Emerald Effect because of the inclusion of the bronze shades in here. Although they're metallic, they're incredibly smooth, and you can just plop this on any of the mattes in here, which only 2. Emerald Effect is mostly dominated by the Diamond Effect formula. Let me turn the Diamond Dimension formula, excuse me, the Crystal Chrome, the Molten Satins, the Crystal Pops. And on my second eye, when I plopped on that emerald green with my finger and just used the brush to blur out the edges, which I was happy to discover if I just wanted to use one of the Crystal Pop shades, as it's called here, I don't necessarily need to start with a matte or add one. I could just fluff the edges of the Crystal Pop formula with a brush, and it naturally yields that diffused effect, which again can serve on its own. I did go in with the darker matte just to add a little more smoke and see what would happen, and it blended seamlessly. It didn't overtake the Crystal Pop formula whatsoever. I made sure I use a lightweight brush in that way to achieve that more diffused effect, but I am just thrilled with this palette, and I knew I was going to be based on how much I love Super Neutral, and it was tough to choose because I also have my eye on Sensual Sunset. I had the pleasure of swatching that in person and was blown away by those shadows. I understand that the colors themselves are not new, but the Dazzle or the Diamond Dimension formula or the Crystal Pop, whatever is in Sensual Sunset, I was impressed by that flash of pink on top of like that dazzling copper base that just can't get enough. And people were swooning over the denim blue one. I held back with the denim blue because I know it's a beautiful palette to have, but I felt that Emerald Effect would just be a little more practical for my collection. It's a palette that, again, I can just use the warmer taupe with the bronze, the molten bronzers, and then can add in pops of the green. This shade right here is kind of giving, as my friend Casey had said, Gigabyte from Subversive 3 from Mother. And you know Gigabyte is an iconic shade from Pat McGrath's portfolio. And to have something similar at my fingertips where I could just plop it on the entire lid or use it as an inner corner highlight or inner lower lash line pop of color. It's extraordinary. The versatility of Emerald Effect, which I would love to film a separate video with, so I'm able to demonstrate the different looks you can achieve with this palette. This is just to give you a sneak peek, if you will. But again, I already knew this was going to be a hit, again, based off my experience with Super Neutral. I'm happy to say, if you have your eye on these Beautifying trend palettes from Charlotte's, they're good. I don't have all of them, but they're very good. Okay, the Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm Flush. I made a mistake. I requested Grape Soda because I had to see this color in action, but she released 2 new shades. Well, I think 4 in all, Grape Soda included, but it was also Spice Latte and Creme Brulee. I thought it was Spice Latte. Spice Latte was the one I had wanted, but I typed Creme Brulee by accident on the email. However, I think it's interesting to see, if you are my complexion shade, how Creme Brulee will perform. And let's start with Grape Soda first. And if you're not familiar with Danessa's Blurring Balm Flush, probably one of her most successful products she released, I think 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It is a cream to powder hybrid slurry high color payoff product that is just extraordinary. And the first time it hit the shelves, my gosh, each and every color was just flying off them. And to have these 4 new shades, especially with the Spice Latte and the Creme Brulee, they serve as like the bronzer shades, the blush and bronzer shades. And I had to use Sonia G's mini buffer, which I'm not entirely sure will be in stock for when this event starts. Hopefully it will be. I'm sorry if it's not. But I wanted to use mini buffer, my sheer mini buffer, to again sheer out the color intensity from these blurring flushed balm products. Grape Soda looks like an orchid on me, and it's incredible how the color evolves upon application, because when you see it in the pan, it appears as it's going to be a literal purple, but there is some warmth in there in the undertone where it translates as more of like a warm orchid on my cheeks. And I think it's extraordinary for spring. I could just wear this by itself. I could throw in some Grape Soda through the crease, and you could also use the Blurring Balm Flush formula on your lips for a super dope monochromatic look. And I could only imagine how this would look with rock. That might have to be a separate video, family. Combining Grape Soda with Natasha Denona's Roxa, which also, by the way, is included on the Beautylish site. That would be incredible. Another great combination will be the Esom Harmony palette. That will be lovely as well. But sorry, the inspiration is taking over. My apologies. You definitely have to grab one of these shades if you're thinking about it and if it's on your radar, which leads me to speak about Creme Brulee. Creme Brulee is like a toasted almond that still has, I think, ample warmth in the undertone, where I'm able to get away with its color richness even on my medium skin tone. And I was able to achieve that again, yes, with a brush. But if you had a denser brush, I would just use a lighter hand, not pick up as much product, and perhaps start the application higher into the hollows of the cheeks so the color has somewhere to go. If you start on the center, you can diffuse it out, but you might feel like you got to do a lot of blending to sheer out the color if you started quite heavy. And going into the formula, it feels creamy on the application, on the pickup, but it sets as a soft matte serving of color. It is an extraordinary product. Fragrance free, I think easy to use, easy to adjust, very much versatile with either you could tap on with fingers if you want, you could use a number of different brush types, be it natural or synthetic. An incredible product. And again, yes, I want a Spice Latte because it would have been a more effortless application than Creme Brulee. Creme Brulee, I have to be a little more strategic with the placement, with what brush I use. Spice Latte, I could only assume I could just throw that on the center of the cheeks and then carry it upward if I wanted. I might pick it up during the sale though. not gonna lie. Which leads me to Chikuhodo. Chikuhodo, one of Japan's leading fude brand, and great that it is available on Beautylish. They offer an array of extraordinary brushes ranging from natural to synthetic, blue squirrel, goat hair, everything in between, but the synthetic brushes. I wanted to try this little guy, the J-S7. I had thought this would be a great concealer brush, but is a little too small and stiff for me, in my opinion, for concealer. And the reason why I say that, because the synthetic fibers are quite stiff, so there's not a lot of bend when I'm tapping the product here under my inner under eye area. Nevertheless, though, I found that the J-S7 was particularly good at pinpointing the more blemished areas on my face, and that's where I picked up a little more foundation or picked up a little more concealer and addressed those blemished parts of my face with the smaller brush, so it's a little more precise in that application, not overwhelming the product with more makeup. And that's what I would use the J-S7 for. That's why I ended up using my finger to tap out the concealer on the other side, because I didn't think it would great, in my opinion, for under eye concealing. If you placed a dot, I'm talking like boop and then let it go, then that's where the J-S7 could be helpful, because you'll feel you'll be here all day trying to tap out concealer if you like to apply quite a bit, right? That's where you would reach for a larger brush to address that blending need. This, I feel, fantastic for smaller areas around the face, even great to softly carve out under the brows or even above the brows. If you like more precision work with cream contouring products, whether it be down through the hollows or down the bridge of your nose, this is where the brush will, I think, be more helpful in those roles. And of course, the Z series is available on Beautylish.com. A great opportunity to stock up and get $20 back, because these brushes are quite expensive. And I believe I think this is the Z9 or the Z11? Is one of those. Classic powder brush. I think this is saying a lot. If you just had to pick one powder brush from Chikuhodo, you wouldn't make a bad choice if it's this one. Z1, my apologies. I said 9 or 11. Who am I? The Z1 is a classic powder brush that you simply can't go wrong in. It's all gray squirrel, blue. I say blue or gray interchangeably. They're the same. The density, the fluidity is unparalleled. And if you had your eye on this brush, maybe you had purchased items in the last Beautylish sale and you got the $20 or even $40, depending on how much you bought, you could apply it to the Z1. It retails for $134, and yes, that is expensive for one brush, but if you could knock off $20, that ain't bad. That ain't bad for the Z1. You'll be extremely happy with that little bit of a discount. So something to consider. Just wanted to put it out there. HOurglass. Now, this product I requested to be added is not new. It's not new. It is the Vanish Airbrush Press Powder. I purchased in the shade Translucent Medium. And I was like, you know what? I want to revisit the press powder. I want to see how it would invite itself into my makeup routine, where it would find itself, because I've been using the heck out of the Prada Beauty Resetting Balancing Powder, and now going into the spring summer season, I know we're not quite there yet temperature wise, almost though. I wondered, maybe I should get back to a traditionally formulated pressed powder that's just naturally drier than like these creamy hybrid formulas that will offer more of a matte finish, that was going to offer more setting, if you will. And if you're my complexion, Translucent Medium I think is fantastic. Not too yellow and not too warm. I think it offers the right amount of brightening and a little bit of coverage, not too much. It is a pressed powder, and it is a translucent pressed powder, but I do prefer to apply it on the center of my face. If I do apply it on the entire face, it's going to have definitely that setting quality without appearing dry on my skin. I had foundation on, plopped on the powder, lightweight, velvety, does not appear powdery at all on the skin, nor does my skin appear overly made up and dry. appreciate how the powder melted into my skin and worked with my foundation color and my own complexion color. It doesn't feel out of place, and it gives me confidence now, especially as we approach the warmer days. If I choose to wear makeup, I can rely on the HOurglass powder to set it, but it not appear textured or my makeup not start to break apart throughout the day. And it does come with the compact and also a little sponge for those touch-ups, right? And again, without appearing powdery whatsoever on the skin. And the color for me is just right. Not too yellow, not too neutral, just where it needs to be. And the undertone, again, has a little bit of that brightening quality that would not appear dull on my skin. So happy with this product. Again, not new. I think this might have released in 2023. I'm not entirely sure. You can let me down below. But I wanted to segue into another HOurglass product that released last year. The Vanish liquid blushes. Oh my goodness. The Unreal. Vanish is the name of one of the shades that I have. The Unreal liquid blush from HOurglass. I think one of their best releases last year. I have the shades Vision and Moment. Or Vanish is just the name of a product in the HOurglass product lineup. I'm just making up stuff. I'm so sorry. Vision and Moment. Vision is a warm rose and Moment is a coral peach. And I'm happy to link the videos down below, and those individuals will have the respective timestamps. Even though it's a liquid, it does this effortlessly, where it doesn't look spotty, splotchy, or uneven on the application. Even if you use your fingers, and a little goes a long way. If you don't mind, sure, I'll plop some on. You just gotta tap the bottom and it'll release just a drop of product. Cute, there we go. That's how it looks. And then if you just wanna, you see what I mean? It sinks into the skin and spreads in such an even fashion that it's virtually effortless on the application. And if you prefer fingers over a brush, over a sponge, it doesn't disturb the blush product that I had on underneath. It doesn't move it or doesn't disrupt it in any way where it appears like I took off product. You know when that happens sometimes when you start layering crazy? You do okay? And why not? Let's apply Vision on the other side. Vision's gonna be a warmer rose, and you could mix these together. But again, I'm just gonna tap in the same way I applied the peachy shade, and it's just 1, 2, 3. I mean, you can't get any easier than this liquid blush formula. It's fantastic, and you can also carry it higher, so it can kind of prep your cheekbone if you wanted to apply a powder highlight there, but you need a little more zhuzh on the skin. You know what I mean? Okay. It's a wonderful product and something I had to include on this recommendation list, because out of all the liquid cream blush formulas that I own, maybe I have to film an entire video dedicated to that formula type. I think this is HOurglass's best product ever. In terms of the consistency, the texture, the color range too, and just the color payoff is extraordinary. The ease of use, the blendability, the smoothness, the evenness, everything. All check boxes are marked, okay? And this leads me to Hindash's gradient highlighter in Doll Dynasty. I requested this highlighter in the last Beautylish event, and I think, yes, Doll Dynasty is like the medium shade, beautifully shiny, easy to apply. This, I think, fares better on a prepped cheekbone, in my opinion. So again, we added that liquid blush. If you lightly tap it on top of where the liquid blush kind of like stopped, it serves as a great prep for this type of gelée baked shiny reflective highlighter formula, that because it's drier, it has more of that shine, and it's incredible. I love it because it's effortless in the laydown. It gives that glow from within look. The gradient highlighter has 3 shades in all. Doll Dynasty is like the middle shade, but that Moonlight shade and the bronzer shade, they would both look extraordinarily beautiful. On to Natasha Denona recently released her Bloom palette for spring. I have an entire video dedicated to swatching 4 looks I did. I think I have a short up if you want to check that out instead of the long form video. Yes, I know, monochromatic again. It's a pretty palette. If you're into those shades and you're like, listen, I don't care if it's monochromatic, give me all the coral peaches and the burgundies with a little terracotta thrown in there, with creme brulee, or even, yes, the Unreal liquid blush in Moment. Match made in heaven, are you kidding me? Or pairing Roxa with grape soda. Come on, let's go. Let's go. It practically matches the compact. Just get these 2 products, okay? Get those 2 products so we can start the looks, okay? So we could get them looks going, all right? I personally would get Yucca. Yucca's still available. I spoke about this before. It would be fantastic if Natasha released like a desaturated Metropolis, and she doesn't have to get as desaturated as Mineralscape does, or even how I think Viseart, if they did their version of Mineralscape, they would go super cool tone. Natasha could stay in the neutral and it will still be extraordinary because it won't be monochromatic and more of a comprehensive, diverse color story like we see in Metropolis, like we've seen in Tropic, in Safari. What else? There is more. There is more. Before the Love era, where she was still doing her sunrise, excuse me. I keep on saying sunset. Sunrise was the first midi she released. That was a fantastic palette. I would even argue Zendo has some nice diversity in there, but if you want the monochromatic stories, they're available. They're available. And oh, my apologies, I failed to include, hold on, Natasha's cream blush duo, specifically the high blush cloudy cream cheek duo. I also have a video reviewing this product. It's in the shade Fresh Mauve. I didn't buy another shade. I almost requested Vamped. Vamped was like the deepest shade out of the lineup. I was curious to see how the cream, it appears wine on the photos, but apparently applies peachier. Explain that, I don't know. Despite that, I am pleased with this formula. It's creamy on the pickup and it has nice movement, but incredible color laydown, and does so evenly. It doesn't appear glassy or too shiny or dewy. It has more of like a natural to soft matte finish on the application, and the highlighter side is more of like a duochrome moment where not supposed to or formulated to deliver that high shine effect like the Hindash highlighter does, more so of like that softened, soft focus kind of this going on. It's like a pink to gold duochrome without high reflectivity. It's more so to add more dimension overall, because Natasha, when speaking about the product upon its release, was encouraging the user to mix both, to mix the duochrome highlighter-ish shade or the blush light shade with the cream blush to add a little more dimension, where you have more high points and low points of color ranging from low to high parts of your cheek region, right? So that gives a user versatility in the blush application, not looking literal, right? If you just don't want one color on the skin, again, you can apply both to create more dimension in that way. Fantastic product. I just kept the one shade because I did wanted to see a little more diversity with the lineup. I thought the overall offering was just all types of pink versus terracotta versus lilac versus like a brown versus red. You know what I mean? Nevertheless, if you're my skin tone, Fresh Mauve is excellent, excellent. A shade that I could throw on and it just kind of It brightens me up, it enlivens my complexion, it makes me look like a beautiful flower. And although the color is named Fresh Mauve, the way it applies on me is more like a rose, like a warmer rose. Sure, with mauve undertones, but mauve implies, well, I guess it depends on who you are, but for me it implies cool, like a mauve cool tone. This will be more like a rose. Just want to let you know. Wayne Goss. I was excited to see Wayne release the collector's edition brush set. Did he release that this year or late last year? I can't recall. All that to say, I didn't rush to get it because I had a feeling I would have I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with Beautylish again for the gift card event. So I waited and didn't buy the entire set right away. Nor was I going to. If anything, I would have purchased 1 or 2 brushes because my brush collection is quite comprehensive. And I wanted to pick the ones that I thought were going to be the most versatile, just high functionality, and again, that I could cover several tasks with. And that has to be the number 1 and the number 5. The number 1 brush is a natural brush hybrid, all natural bristles, but a mixture of, I believe, undyed Chikuhodo goat hair and blue squirrel in this paddle brush design, which, listen, because of its medium-sized head, I was able to get away with under eye powder. Here I apply the HOurglass translucent powder. I even apply the YSL blush because with this paddle-like design and medium density, you could just plop on blush in this tapping manner and it virtually diffuses the blush effortlessly. I mean, no work at all. You could even use the swirl and twirl because there's really nice flexibility, but it's not overly floppy. So there's feedback with the blend. It's just not going to bend lifelessly on the cheeks where you don't feel where the brush is going. So you have a myriad of ways to use this brush with. Specifically with highlighter too, I actually cut across the gradient highlighter and just whipped it across my cheekbone like this. And sure, it's not going to be as precise as a smaller brush, especially if you like more pinpoint highlighting. But if you want more of like that wash-off highlighter, which I think the gradient highlighter is fantastic for, using this paddle brush and it being softer than just an all goat hair brush would be, right? That will be a little stiffer and it will pick up a lot more product. This, having the blue squirrel, dials down the product pickup to maybe like more of a medium and the lay down to be softer, more of like a sheer delivery of color versus like robust serving of it. And the number 5, I was interested because of the slant design. I assumed that it will be great for one and done shadow looks. And we'll get into the Surratt palette in a minute, but I used it for the demonstration showing the number 5. It's good for the crease if you have smaller eyes where you can nudge it right here through the crease and cut through. For one and done shadow looks, if you have larger eyes like mine, you can set the brush on the edge here, cut across the entire lid, and then turn the brush on its side and use the higher edge of the slant to whisk the shadow out. It does take a little bit of a learning curve in my opinion, because when I first used this brush, I had to kind of feel out the crevices of my eye and then tune back into the brush and see how I can turn it to accommodate the shape, right? So it's not as straightforward as a one and done brush as I assume, because I think if it was fluffier, maybe if it didn't have, or it was a little more flexible, then it would be more of like that washed out one and done situation. But because it has a little density to it, I just have to be careful of not picking up too much product, because I did use it to apply Charlotte's Silky Matte from the Emerald Effect, what is it called? The taupe shade. They just call it number 2 matte silk, but I rather would use a more traditionally formulated crease brush, or even like a brush without the slant. You know what I mean? But when I applied this wine metallic from Les Roses in the Surratt palette, first of all, the formula has great color payoff, but the number 5 I thought spread the color well across my crease, and it is thin enough to throw on color on my lower lash line. So you will get more of a diffused effect. If you don't want all that shadow under the lash line, then I would grab a smaller brush for more precise placement of that shadow. But I'm happy with the number 5. It's one of the more unique shadow brushes that I own now. Again, because of the slant, because of its longer bristle length for the eyes. You're into the nose contour thing. This is fantastic for nose contouring, to get a little more precise down the nose and also to carry color here on the higher arc of the nose. So just, you know, wanted to put that out there. Unfortunately, the Paris Matte Attendu palette was not in stock upon my request, so I have to keep an eye on that palette, but I would recommend that you grab Sireneuse. Sireneuse comes in Viseart's new Vis Pro format, where yes, it's the Attendu size in terms of the palette dimensions and the pan sizes, but it's not the tri-fold, it's the one fold, which I believe you can, that's where it is. You gotta do this for the easel, okay, the bend and snap. This has to be one of my most favorite color creations from Viseart's. It's like mermaid goth. You can't go wrong with this color story, and you can't go wrong with the Viseart formula, a mixture of mattes, metallics, and duochromes. I have a video taking a look at Sireneuse. If you want looks, I also have a short using Sireneuse. It is extraordinary, and Viseart, definitely one of my favorite brands, not just for the formula, but for the color stories, right? They just always keep us on our toes. And when you look at the entirety of Viseart's eyeshadow palette portfolio, there is something for everyone. Absolutely. And no matter which palette you pick up, you can also, because these pans are magnetic, you can mix and match as you like. If there's a palette that's too light, maybe you could go into dark matte, or even, what is dark edit? One of those curations, and just kind of make it happen for your eyes and your complexion. But if you could get your hands on Sireneuse for this event, I would get it, because it sold out at one point. I'm not entirely sure if it's limited edition. I'm not sure on that, but I'm just giving you a little nudge. If I had to pick, if you were trying to decide between Natasha Denona, Bloom, and Sireneuse, I would get Sireneuse. You can't go wrong with the size. This is travel friendly, and look at this. You got navy, you got duochrome, you got taupe. If you wanted the coral, you got the muted coral right here. You got the dark brown, you got the metallic dark brown, you got like the silvery taupes, and you could definitely make that spring. You can definitely make that spring by not using the darker shades and just sticking with the lighter ones, and then throw on either fresh mauve or one of the Hourglass liquid blushes, or even Creme Brulee. Please, just stop it right now, okay? Spring ready, here we come. And that leads us into Surratt Beauty. I had to check out this Les Roses palette because I was intrigued by the fact that it was heavily sought out, but it's $102. I get it. And it comes with a pin, as you saw in the unboxing, where maybe you can mix and match the shadows. When you see the swatches here, that lower right hand flaky shade doesn't swatch as well as it applies. It applies a lot better because after I ran that metallic wine on my entire lid and crease, I used Sonia's brush to apply the inner corner. And we'll get to Sonia in a minute. My apologies. My brain is all over the place. I should have made a list. When it applies, it definitely has more of like that crushed disco ball effect versus how it looked on the swatch. So if you were weary of that, I completely understand. Something else you can do if you wanted to bump up the shine and sparkle is to pick some up with your finger and then tap it on top of any of the shadows in the palette, and it definitely will have that glistening effect on the lids. And then of course this taupe shade, this is like nude mauve but lighter. So if you're my complexion, you'll get coloring through the crease, albeit very soft. This is going to be a soft contoured eye. And the upper left hand corner shade, it looks yellow in the pan but applies pink when you lay it down on the lid. Is one of those low-key duochrome shades, which I did. I used my finger to apply it just to get a little more color payoff. It's soft. It's a soft shade. And then I threw on the wine across my lash line just to invite that shadow into the mix. And yeah, I would say Les Roses is a beautiful palette. It's demure, it's low-key, okay? And if you're thinking about best bang for your buck, yes, I would go with Viseart again. Viseart has, if I may, if we scroll down here, they got the singles, by the way, if you're into that. And they got the empty palettes to customize your own. Picking up something that's kind of giving Les Roses. Let's see here. Attendu palette Violette Vespertine could be a Les Rose alternative if you want, and you get more shadows. Or even the smaller Petite Fours. Petite Fours is basically the Surratt, but the Petite Four is smaller in size, dimension-wise, for the palette. You know, it's funny, I'm thinking about Cashmere. Cashmere could be a great alternative too to Les Roses. I just wanted to see what this palette was about, but I think, let me see, I have to go back to it and find out if it was made where it was made. And I'm realizing too, the Surratt eyeshadow quad is more expensive than a Chanel quad. 3 best-selling rose-inspired matte shades and a glimmering neutral to complete any eye look. Infused with an exclusive Japanese slurry formula, these shadows can be applied wet or dry. The refillable, customizable palette allows you to easily refill individual shades as needed. So maybe that's it. The Japanese slurry is expensive. It's a beautiful palette, 100%. I love my eye look. It's simple. If I wore this and someone who is not makeup savvy, I think they would just like it. They were like, oh, that's beautiful eyeshadow, right? They're not going to say, oh, that's Surratt Les Roses. How come you spent $102 or got it complimentary? Okay, Alicia? I don't think they'll be able to tell. They'll just say it's a lovely eyeshadow. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But let me end with Sonia G, because people might have their eye on her Voyage set by Teshu, and I have an entire video covering this set, and it was sent complimentary by Sonia G and the Beautylish team, so I have to say thank you again. A note about the powder brush, because you might have seen feedback online to say that it doesn't feel as soft as like an exclusively made squirrel brush like the Z1 from Chikuhodo's Z series. And a huge thank you to my friend, my Fude friend, she knows who she is, who helps me understand bristle types better, and she is just well versed in Fude far more than me. Like, I wish I could just take her out and us talk brushes for hours and have my notebook and get all the details down. But she was explaining to me that because the bristles are dyed, the goat hair bristles are dyed in order to match the squirrel hair, dyeing goat bristles does rough up the edges. It does alter the bristle integrity, which yields just a slightly rougher touch upon application and in contact with the skin. And even though this brush includes squirrel hair is quite delicate. And because of the brush's shape, it wouldn't have maintained the integrity of the design if it was a higher ratio squirrel hair, because you have tea brown dyed goat hair bristles, which you can find in Sonia's collection in some of her brushes. I don't think the tea brown dye has the same effect as black dye on goat hair bristles. So that's just something to consider. Despite that, the way this brush collection came about is what I think is special. I just love Sonia, of course, so I'm partial, but I think her journey is extraordinary with how she started with her Fude blog, describing all her Japanese brushes, and again, how she connected Fude artisans to the international consumer and just bridging that gap so more Fude can spread across the world, where the consumer is more confident in their purchasing choice simply because they know what they're buying. The translation has been made, right? So just wanted to put that out there, and I think I would like to film a dedicated brush video more on the nerdy side, just breaking down the different brands and the different grades of hair that each brand uses and the distinctions, right? Because not all gray squirrel is created equal, not all goat hair is created equal, right? Each brand has exclusive processing, has exclusive accessibility to the hairs. It all makes a difference in the brushes that they create. But I wanted to mention that because if you are reading feedback about Sonia's set, how the Sora brush might not be the softest out there, and it's not. I think the Z1 is much softer, and even brushes in her own collection that are not dyed with black dye, because to match the gray squirrel, are softer, like the Face Pro. What comes to mind? Her Inochige Pro, which not as large as the Sora, but it has like that calligraphy-like shape to the brush design head. And her fan brushes, listen, let's go to Sonia's page right now. And the Voyage set is limited. Once it goes, it's gone. It's not coming back. So that's another thing to consider. The Niji Pro is excellent for harder to pick up gelée textures and just a hardier polishing for heavy makeup wearers where you want all your powders to look smooth on the skin. Sheer Buffer's in stock, even though it's not the mini buffer. Sheer Buffer is still goated for the blurring balm flushed. Soft cheek you can't go wrong with. And again, this is an example of the tea dye brown goat hairs, which are a lot softer than black dyed goat hairs. Traditions is a phenomenally made brush, and this is Kakishibu dye, which does have an effect on the bristles, but they don't make them as rough as black dye, I believe, and the aesthetics of the brush is just stunning. Inochige Pro I mentioned. Fundamental Classic Cheek is a brush I brought along with me on a trip, and highly versatile to use with a number of different powder products. Blush, but for bronzer or even all over powder setting. And I could go on and on and on about Sonia G brushes, but those are my recommendations, both from my wish list that I requested from Beautylish and from items that I already had in my collection. I didn't want to go too deep dive because if you want to see other recommendations I've made for the last few years, I'm more than happy to create a playlist so you could look through those videos. So I'm not repeating myself over and over again with the same products, but highlighting the newer ones that came into the scene recently. So let me know, fam, what you have your eye on. Are you building your Beautylish wish list? What do you think you're gonna get? What you're gonna skip on? Any thoughts, sentiments, concerns, just drop them down below. And if you made it this far, consider liking this video and also think about subscribing, because I proposed several ideas in this one video of other videos I want to film, like the Roxa and Grape Soda collaboration. Hello? And others, so make sure you also click that notification bell so you are alerted immediately of when that upload drops. If you want to check out my Bloom review or even my Sonia G Tissue Voyage set review, you can click on those videos here. I'll see you in these videos down below and on here again next time.